The sight of a young woman being led through the dusty street of Los Lunis, New Mexico, by a rope around her wrists made Logan Mackenzie stop dead in his tracks, his hand frozen halfway to the leather satchel where he kept his dried venison. It was late summer in 1877, and the desert sun beat down mercilessly on the small trading town that sat nestled between rocky outcroppings and sparse vegetation. Logan had come down from the Sangre de Cristo Mountains for supplies, his massive frame and weather-worn buckskin clothing marking him as one of the solitary trappers who preferred the company of pines and elk to civilization. His dark hair fell past his shoulders, tied back with a leather cord, and his muscular arms glistened with sweat as he stood there, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The woman stumbling behind the portly merchant was young, maybe 22 or 23, with auburn hair that caught the sunlight despite being matted with dust and grime. Her dress, once fine green cotton, was torn at the hem and stained with travel. But it was her face that struck Logan hardest. She kept her chin up despite everything, her hazel eyes burning with a fierce determination that seemed at odds with her bound wrists and defeated posture. "What in God's name is happening here?" Logan's deep voice carried across the street, drawing the attention of several townspeople who had been pretending not to notice the spectacle. The merchant, a man named Silas Crenshaw, whom Logan recognized from previous trips to town, turned with an irritated expression. "None of your concern, mountain man. This is a private business matter." Logan crossed the distance between them in long strides, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust. Up close, he could see the dried tear tracks on the woman's face, though her eyes remained dry now, as if she had run out of tears to shed. "Looks like human trafficking to me, and that makes it everyone's concern." Crenshaw's face reddened. "Her father owed me $300, for goods I provided on credit, medical supplies for his sick wife. He died 2 weeks ago, left nothing but debts and this daughter. The law says I can claim what's owed to me." "The law says you can claim property, not people," Logan said, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. "In case you have not noticed, we are not exactly swimming in lawmen out here," Crenshaw replied. "I have a buyer in Santa Fe who will take her off my hands, pay the debt, and she will work as a servant in a respectable household. It is more than fair." Logan looked at the woman again. She met his gaze steadily, and he saw no plea for help there, no begging, just a quiet strength that made something twist in his chest. She expected nothing from him or anyone else. She had learned not to hope. "How much did you say the debt was?" Logan asked quietly. Crenshaw's eyes narrowed with suspicion. $300. Why?" "I will pay it." The merchant's mouth fell open, then snapped shut. "You are joking." "Do I look like a man who jokes?" Logan pulled a leather pouch from his belt, the one he had been saving for 2 years of trapping and trading. It was meant to buy him a better rifle, maybe some cattle to start a small ranch. $300. Count it if you want." Crenshaw snatched the pouch and rifled through it with greedy fingers, his lips moving as he counted. The woman, meanwhile, stared at Logan with an expression he could not quite read. Confusion, certainly, but also wariness. "It is all here," Crenshaw said finally, tucking the pouch into his vest. He untied the rope from the woman's wrists and handed the end to Logan. "She is your problem now." Logan took the rope and immediately loosened it, letting it fall to the ground. "She is not anyone's problem. She is free." The woman rubbed her raw wrists, her eyes never leaving his face. "Why would you do that? You don't even know me." "Don't need to know you to know that what was happening here was wrong," Logan said. He turned and started walking toward the general store, then paused and looked back. "You got somewhere to go? People to stay with?" She shook her head slowly. "My father was all I had. My mother died 3 months ago. That is what the debt was for medicine that didn't work, a doctor who couldn't save her." Logan felt that twist in his chest again, sharper this time. He knew about loss, about being alone in the world. He had lost his own family to cholera when he was 18, had spent the last 12 years surviving in the mountains because civilization held too many painful memories. "You got any skills? Things you can do?" he asked. She lifted her chin higher, that fierce pride flashing in her eyes again. "I can read and write. I can cook, sew, tend a garden. I can shoot too, though not as well as I would like. My father taught me before he took sick." "What is your name?" "Hannah Norris." Logan nodded slowly, thinking. He had not planned on this, had not planned on anything except getting his supplies and heading back up into the mountains before the first snow. But he could not just leave her here with nothing, nowhere to go. Crenshaw would just find another way to profit from her desperation, or someone worse would come along. "I am Logan Mackenzie," he said finally. "I have a cabin up in the mountains, about 2 days' ride from here. It is rough living, but it is safe, and there's food. You can stay there until you figure out what you want to do next. I won't ask anything of you except maybe some help with cooking and mending, if you are willing." Hannah studied him for a long moment, her hazel eyes searching his face for deception or hidden motives. "You want nothing else?" "Nothing but your smile," Logan said, the words coming out before he had fully thought them through. "I mean, I would like to know you are all right, that this worked out for you. That is payment enough." Something flickered across her face, an emotion too quick for him to catch. "I have not had much reason to smile lately. Mr. Mackenzie." "Logan, just Logan." He gestured toward the general store. "Let me get my supplies and something for you to wear that's more practical for mountain living. Then we can head out if you're agreeable." "I don't have any money to pay you back," she said quietly. "Did not ask for any." Hannah bit her lip, clearly wrestling with something. Finally, she nodded. "All right, but I will earn my keep, Logan. I won't be a burden to you." They spent the next hour gathering supplies. Logan bought her sturdy boots, thick canvas pants, wool shirts, and a heavy coat for the coming winter. The store owner, a pinch-faced woman named Mrs. Holloway, clucked her tongue disapprovingly but took Logan's money readily enough. Hannah changed in the back room of the store, emerging in her new clothes, looking more prepared for the wilderness, but still carrying that guarded expression. Logan loaded everything onto his horse, a sturdy roan gelding named Copper, and helped Hannah up onto a mule he bought from the livery. She sat awkwardly at first, clearly not used to riding, but she did not complain. They left Los Lunis as the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, painting the desert in shades of orange and gold. Logan led them northeast, toward the mountains that rose like ancient sentinels in the distance. Hannah rode behind him in silence for the first few hours, and he did not push her to talk. She had been through enough. They made camp that first night in a small canyon where a spring provided fresh water and cottonwood trees offered shelter. Logan set up his bedroll and gave Hannah his spare blanket, then built a fire and started preparing a simple meal of beans and salt pork. Hannah watched him work for a while, then quietly began helping, slicing the pork with the knife he handed her and stirring the pot while he tended the fire. "You don't talk much," she observed as they ate. Logan shrugged. "Guess I got out of the habit. Don't have much occasion for conversation with the elk and pine trees." "How long have you been living up there?" 12 years, give or take. Came out here after my family died. Figured I would trap for a season, then move on. Never did." Hannah was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry about your family. I'm sorry about yours." They sat in companionable silence after that, listening to the crackle of the fire and the distant call of a coyote. When they finally lay down to sleep, Logan positioned himself between Hannah and the open desert, his rifle within easy reach. He heard her shifting restlessly on her blanket, and he knew she was probably scared, probably wondering if she had made a terrible mistake trusting a stranger. "Hannah," he said quietly into the darkness. "Yes?" "You're safe. I give you my word." Another long pause. "Why did you help me?" "Really?" Logan stared up at the stars scattered across the black sky. "My sister was about your age when she died. Sarah. She had the same look in her eyes that you had today, that determined look like the world could knock you down but you would get back up anyway. I guess I saw her in you and I couldn't just walk away." He heard Hannah's breath catch, a small sound that might have been the beginning of tears. But when she spoke, her voice was steady. "Thank you, Logan, for what you did today. I don't know if I will ever be able to repay you, but I will try." "Just be all right," he said. "That is all the payment I need." The second day of travel took them higher into the foothills, where the desert scrub gave way to juniper and pinon pine. The air grew cooler, and Hannah pulled her new coat tighter around her shoulders. Logan watched her from the corner of his eye, noting how she sat straighter in the saddle now, how she looked around with interest rather than fear. She was adapting, finding her strength again. They stopped for a midday meal beside a stream, and Hannah knelt by the water to wash her face and hands. When she looked up at Logan, droplets clinging to her eyelashes, he felt something shift in his chest. She was beautiful, he realized, though that was not why he had helped her. There was a light in her that the world had tried to extinguish but had not quite managed. "How much farther?" she asked, shaking water from her hands. "We will be there by nightfall. The cabin is in a valley between two peaks. Lots of game, good water, shelter from the worst of the winter storms." "Do you ever get lonely up there?" Logan considered the question. "Sometimes, but lonely and alone are not always the same thing. I have been alone by choice. Lonely is when you are with people and still feel like nobody sees you." Hannah nodded slowly. "I understand that. My father loved me, but after my mother died, it was like he disappeared inside himself. He was there, but he was not really there. Grief does that to people. Is that what happened to you? After your family?" Logan picked up a smooth stone and tossed it into the stream. "I suppose it did. I ran away from it instead of facing it. Maybe that was cowardice. Or maybe it was survival," Hannah said softly. "We all do what we must to keep going." They reached the cabin just as the sun was setting, its light filtering through the tall ponderosa pines that surrounded Logan's home. The cabin was larger than Hannah had expected, built from sturdy logs with a stone chimney and a covered porch. Behind it stood a small barn and a corral for Copper and the mule. "It is not much, but it is solid," Logan said as he helped Hannah dismount. "I built it myself over the first 2 winters." Hannah walked slowly toward the cabin, taking it all in. There was a vegetable garden, mostly harvested now, and neat stacks of firewood under a lean-to. Everything spoke of careful planning and hard work. "It is wonderful," she said, and she meant it. Inside, the cabin was one large room with a sleeping loft accessible by a ladder. There was a stone fireplace, a sturdy table and chairs, shelves lined with supplies and books, and a bed in one corner. Logan immediately began stoking the fire while Hannah looked around, her eyes lingering on the books. "You read?" she asked, surprised. "My mother was a school teacher. She made sure all her children could read and write, said it was the most important gift she could give us." Logan straightened from the fireplace. "You can have the bed. I will sleep in the loft." "Logan, this is your home. I can't take your bed." "Yes, you can, and you will. I insist." They argued about it for a few minutes, but Logan was immovable on the subject. Finally, Hannah relented, too tired to fight anymore. They prepared a simple dinner together, moving around each other in the small space with surprising ease, and ate while Logan told her about the land, the animals she might encounter, the rhythms of mountain life. That night, lying in Logan's bed while he climbed up to the loft, Hannah stared at the dying fire and tried to process everything that had happened. 2 days ago, she'd been certain her life was over, that she would be sold into servitude and spend the rest of her days regretting every choice that had led her to that moment. Now she was in a cabin in the mountains with a man who had spent his life savings to free her and asked for nothing in return. "Logan," she called softly. "Yeah?" His voice drifted down from the loft. "What if I smile? Will that be enough payment?" There was a pause. "Hannah, I told you. You don't owe me anything." "I know. But what if I want to? Smile, I mean." Another pause, longer this time. "Then I would consider myself a wealthy man." Hannah felt the corners of her mouth turn up just slightly. It was not much, barely a smile at all, but it was the first one she had managed in months. She fell asleep with that small warmth in her chest, the feeling of something that might, eventually, become hope. The days that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. Logan rose before dawn to check his trap lines or hunt, and Hannah would wake to find fresh meat or fish waiting to be prepared. She threw herself into the domestic tasks, not because she felt obligated, but because it felt good to have purpose again, to be building something rather than watching everything fall apart. She baked bread in the Dutch oven, using the sourdough starter Logan had been maintaining for years. She mended his clothes, which were in desperate need of repair, and organized his supplies. She weeded what remained of the garden and helped him prepare the cabin for winter, chinked gaps in the logs with mud and moss, and stacked firewood on the porch. Logan, for his part, was patient and kind. He taught her how to properly aim and fire his rifle, spending hours with her at a makeshift range until she could hit a target with reasonable accuracy. He showed her which plants were edible, which were medicinal, and which to avoid. He told her stories about the mountains, about the bears and mountain lions, the eagles and elk, speaking with the quiet reverence of someone who truly loved this wild place. 3 weeks after her arrival, Hannah was gathering water from the stream when she heard a noise in the brush. She froze, remembering Logan's warnings about mountain lions, and slowly reached for the knife at her belt. But instead of a predator, a young deer stumbled out of the undergrowth, its leg caught in what looked like an old trap. Hannah approached slowly, speaking in a low, soothing voice. The deer's eyes rolled with fear, but it was too exhausted to struggle much. Working carefully, she managed to pry the trap open and free the deer's leg. The animal limped away quickly, disappearing into the forest, and Hannah sat back on her heels, her hands shaking with adrenaline. "That was brave," Logan's voice said from behind her, making her jump. Or foolish, hard to say which. Hannah turned to find him watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "I couldn't just leave it." "No, I suppose you couldn't." Logan came closer, kneeling to examine the trap. "This is old, not one of mine. Probably left by another trapper years ago. We will need to do a sweep of the area. Make sure there are not more of these around." They spent the rest of the day searching for traps, finding 3 more that Logan disabled and destroyed. As they worked side by side, Hannah found herself watching him more than she probably should. The way his muscles flexed as he worked the metal, the concentration on his face, the gentleness with which he handled even inanimate objects. He was unlike any man she had ever known, rough on the outside, but tender at the core. That evening, as they prepared dinner together, Logan asked her about her life before. Hannah found herself talking more than she had in years, telling him about her childhood in Kansas, how her father had been a freight hauler and her mother a seamstress. She talked about learning to read, about the books she had loved, about the dreams she had once had of becoming a teacher herself. "What stopped you?" Logan asked, chopping vegetables while she kneaded bread dough. "Life, I suppose. My mother got sick, then my father's business started failing. We moved here hoping the climate would help her health, but it didn't. And then there were the debts and everything just spiraled." She paused, her hands stilling in the dough. "I spent so long just trying to survive that I forgot how to dream." Logan set down his knife and looked at her directly. "Maybe it is time to remember." Hannah met his gaze, and something passed between them in that moment, something electric and terrifying and wonderful. She looked away first, flustered and focused intently on her bread. But that night, lying in bed, she could not stop thinking about the way he had looked at her, the warmth in his eyes, and she realized with a start that she was happy here. Despite everything, despite the fact that she was living in a cabin in the wilderness with a man she had known for less than a month, she was happy. The first snow came in mid-October, a light dusting that made the world look clean and new. Hannah stood on the porch, wrapped in her heavy coat, and watched the flakes drift down through the pine trees. Logan came up beside her, 2 cups of coffee in his hands, and offered her one. "Thank you," she said, wrapping her fingers around the warm tin cup. "Never gets old, that first snow," Logan said. "Always feels like a promise of something." "A promise of being trapped indoors for months," Hannah said, but she was grinning. Logan laughed, a deep, rich sound that she had heard more and more frequently lately. "That too, but also renewal. The world gets to rest to prepare for spring." They stood in comfortable silence, sipping their coffee and watching the snow. Hannah glanced at Logan from the corner of her eye and felt her heart do a strange little flip. When had this happened? When had she started to care for him as more than just the man who had saved her? Maybe it had been gradual, building with every shared meal, every story exchanged, every moment of quiet companionship. Or maybe it had been there from the beginning, from that first moment when he had stood up for her in the street when he'd had no reason to. "Logan," she said quietly, "I smiled today. Several times, actually." He turned to look at her, his dark eyes searching her face. "I noticed. I wanted you to know that you have given me back something I thought I had lost forever." Logan's expression softened. "Hannah, you gave yourself that back. I just provided the space for it to happen." She shook her head. "No, it was you. Your kindness, your patience. The way you see me as a person, not a burden or an obligation. You have no idea how rare that is." Logan set down his coffee cup and turned to face her fully. "I do know, actually, because you have done the same for me. I've been alone for so long that I forgot what it was like to have someone to share things with. You have reminded me." Hannah's breath caught as he reached out and gently brushed a snowflake from her hair. His hand lingered near her cheek, and she found herself leaning into the touch without conscious thought. "I need to tell you something," Logan said, his voice rough. "And if it is not welcome, you just say so and we will never speak of it again. But I think I am falling in love with you, Hannah Norris. Maybe I have been since the moment I saw you in that street, or maybe it happened slower than that. But either way, it is happening, and I thought you should know." Hannah felt tears spring to her eyes, but they were good tears, happy tears. "Oh, Logan, I thought I was going crazy, feeling the way I do. I tried to tell myself it was just gratitude or loneliness or anything other than what it actually is. But it is love. I love you." Logan's face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen from him, transforming his usually serious features into something boyish and joyful. He cupped her face in both his large calloused hands and bent down to kiss her gently, tenderly, as snowflakes swirled around them. It was Hannah's first kiss, and it was perfect, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Logan rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right," he said. "Court you properly, give you time to be sure. I know we have only known each other a short while, and I don't want you to feel pressured because you are staying here." Hannah laughed, giddy with happiness. "Logan Mackenzie, I am already sure, but I will give you time to catch up if you need it." They went inside, and Logan added more wood to the fire while Hannah prepared their evening meal. But everything felt different now, charged with possibility. They kept catching each other's eyes and grinning like fools, and when they sat down to eat, Logan reached across the table to take her hand. "Tell me everything," he said. "Everything you want, everything you dream about. I want to know it all." So Hannah told him. She talked about wanting children someday, about wanting to create a real home filled with love and laughter. She talked about wanting to read every book ever written, about wanting to see her garden flourish, about wanting to grow old with someone who truly knew her. And Logan listened, his thumb tracing gentle circles on the back of her hand, and told her his own dreams. About expanding the cabin, about maybe raising some cattle or horses, about teaching his children to love and respect the wilderness the way he did, about finding peace with his past and building a future with her. The winter deepened, and Logan and Hannah grew closer. He taught her to snowshoe, and they explored the valley together on crisp, clear days when the sun made the snow sparkle like diamonds. She taught him to dance, humming tunes her mother had taught her while they spun around the cabin floor, laughing when they bumped into furniture. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, sharing their hopes and fears, their memories and dreams. Logan told her about his family, about his parents and his 2 sisters and younger brother, all lost to disease. He cried when he spoke of them, the first tears he had shed in 12 years, and Hannah held him while he grieved. Hannah told him about the fear she had felt watching her mother waste away, about the desperation as the debts piled up, about the horrible moment when she realized her father had died and left her completely alone. Logan held her through her tears, whispering that she was not alone anymore, that she would never be alone again. They kissed often, sweet kisses by the fire, playful kisses while cooking, tender kisses before saying goodnight. But Logan was true to his word about taking things slowly, and Hannah loved him all the more for his restraint and respect. Christmas came, and they celebrated simply. Logan had carved her a beautiful wooden box inlaid with pressed wildflowers he had preserved from the summer. Hannah had sewn him a new shirt from fabric she had found in his supplies, embroidering his initials on the pocket in careful stitches. "It is perfect," Logan said, running his fingers over the embroidery. "You are perfect." "I am far from perfect," Hannah replied, but she was glowing with pleasure. "Perfect for me, then." Logan pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply, and Hannah felt like she was melting, like she was made of honey and sunlight. "Marry me," Logan said suddenly, pulling back to look at her. "I know I said I would give you time and we can wait as long as you want for the wedding itself, but I want to know that you will be my wife, that we will build this life together." Hannah did not hesitate. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Logan whooped with joy and spun her around the cabin, both of them laughing breathlessly. When he finally set her down, he dug in his pocket and pulled out a simple gold band. "This was my mother's. I have been carrying it around for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment." "This is the right moment," Hannah said, her voice thick with emotion. "Every moment with you is the right moment." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. They spent the rest of the day wrapped in each other's arms, talking about the wedding, about their future, about the life they would build together. "I want to marry you soon," Hannah said. "I don't want to wait." Logan smiled against her hair. "How soon? Spring, when we can get down to Los Lunis and find a preacher?" Spring it is. The rest of the winter passed in a blur of happiness. They planned and dreamed and prepared for their wedding. Logan began work on an addition to the cabin, a second room that could serve as a bedroom and give them more space. Hannah sewed herself a simple but beautiful wedding dress from white cotton Logan traded for in town during a quick supply run in early February. When the snow began to melt and the first green shoots appeared in the garden, they packed their things and made the journey down to Los Lunis. The town looked different to Hannah now, no longer a place of fear and desperation, but just another settlement, nothing that had power over her anymore. They found a circuit preacher passing through town, and he agreed to marry them in the small church on a sunny April morning. There were no guests, just the preacher and his wife as witnesses, but Hannah did not care. She only had eyes for Logan, standing tall and handsome in his best clothes, his long hair neatly tied back, his dark eyes shining with love as he said his vows. "I, Logan Mackenzie, take you, Hannah Norris, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you, to honor you, to protect you, and to cherish you for all the days of my life. You have given me back my heart, and I give you mine freely and completely." Hannah's voice shook as she said her own vows. "I, Hannah Norris, take you, Logan Mackenzie, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, to honor you, to stand beside you, and to cherish you for all the days of my life. You saved me in every way a person can be saved, and I will spend the rest of my life showing you what that means to me." When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Logan kissed her with such tenderness and joy that Hannah felt her heart might burst. They were married. She was Hannah Mackenzie now, and this beautiful, strong, gentle man was her husband. They spent their wedding night in the town's small hotel, the first time they had truly been alone as husband and wife. Logan was patient and gentle, making sure Hannah felt safe and loved, and when they finally came together, it was with a sense of rightness and completion that Hannah had never imagined possible. "I love you," Logan whispered against her skin. "My wife, my Hannah." "I love you," she whispered back. "My husband, my Logan." They returned to the cabin a few days later, and life settled into a new rhythm. Hannah threw herself into her garden with renewed energy, planting vegetables and herbs and even some flowers. Logan finished the new room and surprised her by building a bookshelf that spanned one entire wall. "For all the books we will collect," he explained, "and maybe someday for teaching our children to read." Hannah's hand went instinctively to her stomach, though there was nothing there yet. But someday, she thought, someday there would be children running through these rooms, learning about the world from their parents, growing up surrounded by love and the beauty of the mountains. Summer came, hot and bright, and Hannah and Logan worked side by side, building their life together. They hiked through the mountains, Logan showing her places he had discovered over the years, secret meadows and hidden waterfalls and overlooks where you could see for miles. They swam in the cold mountain streams, laughing and splashing like children. They made love often, learning each other's bodies and hearts with growing confidence and joy. Hannah had never imagined that physical intimacy could be so wonderful, so connecting. Every time Logan touched her, she felt cherished and desired and completely seen. In late August, Hannah began to feel unwell in the mornings. At first, she thought it was something she had eaten, but when the nausea continued for a week, she began to suspect the truth. Her monthly courses were late, and her breasts were tender, and she found herself crying over the smallest things. She waited until she was certain before telling Logan. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, she took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby," she said softly. Logan froze, his eyes going wide. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be without a doctor. But yes, I think so." A smile spread across Logan's face, slow and wondering. "A baby. We are going to have a baby." He pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully now, as if she were made of glass. "Are you happy?" he asked. "So happy," Hannah said, tears streaming down her face. "I did not know I could be this happy." The pregnancy was not always easy. Hannah suffered from terrible morning sickness for the first few months, and Logan hovered over her anxiously, trying to help however he could. He brewed her ginger tea, cooked foods that did not turn her stomach, and held her hair back when she needed to be sick. But as the months passed and Hannah's belly grew round, her sickness faded and was replaced by a glowing energy. She nested like a bird, organizing and reorganizing the cabin, sewing tiny clothes and preparing for the baby's arrival. Logan was beside himself with excitement and nerves. He made a cradle from smooth pine wood, carving animals into the headboard. He stocked up on extra supplies, worried about being snowed in when the baby came. He read everything he could find about childbirth and caring for infants, determined to be prepared. "Logan, people have been having babies since the beginning of time," Hannah said one evening, laughing at his intensity. "It will be all right." "I know, but what if something goes wrong? What if I cannot help you?" His face was tight with worry. Hannah took his hands and placed them on her belly, where the baby was kicking vigorously. "Feel that? That is our strong, healthy baby, and I am strong and healthy too. We will get through this together, just like we have gotten through everything else." Logan leaned down and kissed her belly, speaking softly to the child within. "You hear that, little one? Your mama is the strongest, bravest woman in the world. You are very lucky." Winter came again, and Hannah grew larger and slower. She could no longer snowshoe through the valley with Logan, so he stayed close to the cabin, unwilling to be far from her. They spent long evenings by the fire, Logan reading aloud while Hannah knitted or sewed, both of them content in their little world. The baby came on a cold February night, arriving in a rush of pain and effort and finally, joy. Logan stayed with Hannah through it all, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, whispering encouragement even when he was terrified. And when the baby finally emerged, squalling and red-faced and perfect, Logan cried harder than Hannah did. "It is a boy," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "A son. We have a son." Hannah held out her arms, and Logan carefully placed the tiny bundle in them. She looked down at her baby, at his scrunched-up face and shock of dark hair, and felt a love so fierce and overwhelming that it took her breath away. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We have been waiting for you." They named him Lucas, after Logan's father, and he was a happy, healthy baby who rarely cried except when he was hungry. Logan was a devoted father, getting up in the night to walk with Lucas when he fussed, changing his nappies without complaint, and singing to him in a surprisingly tuneful voice. Watching her husband with their son, Hannah felt her heart expand in ways she had not known were possible. This was everything she had ever wanted, everything she had thought she would never have. A husband who loved her, a child, a home filled with warmth and laughter. Lucas grew quickly, hitting every milestone early. He was walking by 10 months, chattering by his first birthday, and by the time he was 2, he was following Logan everywhere, wanting to help with every task. Logan was endlessly patient, teaching Lucas about the animals and plants, about respect for nature and the importance of hard work. When Lucas was 3, Hannah found herself pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and she felt she knew what to expect. Logan was just as anxious and protective, but he hid it better, not wanting to worry Lucas. Their daughter arrived in early summer, a beautiful baby girl with her mother's auburn hair and her father's dark eyes. They named her Lily, and Lucas was immediately smitten with his baby sister, wanting to help care for her at every opportunity. "Gentle, Lucas," Logan said, guiding his son's hand as he touched Lily's tiny fingers. "She is very small and delicate." "I will protect her," Lucas declared solemnly, "like you protect Mama." Logan met Hannah's eyes over their children's heads, and they shared a smile full of love and pride. Life continued to be full and rich. Logan expanded their homestead, building a larger barn and acquiring a small herd of cattle. Hannah's garden flourished, providing most of their food, and she even began preserving extra to trade in Los Lunis. Lucas started learning to read from the books on their shelves, and Lily was a cheerful, curious toddler who got into everything. On summer evenings, the family would sit on the porch together, watching the stars come out. Logan would hold Lily on his lap while Lucas snuggled against Hannah, and they would tell stories or sing songs or simply enjoy the peaceful quiet of their mountain home. Hannah often thought back to that day in Los Lunis when her life had seemed over, when she had lost all hope. If someone had told her then that she would end up here with a husband who adored her and two beautiful children and a home full of love, she never would have believed it. But here she was, living a life more wonderful than any she could have imagined, and it all started with a man who had been willing to give everything for nothing more than her smile. One evening, when the children were asleep and she and Logan were sitting by the fire, Hannah turned to her husband. "Do you remember what you said that first day? That you wanted nothing but my smile?" Logan smiled softly, reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. "I remember." "You got so much more than that," Hannah said. "A wife, children, a full house. Do you ever regret it? Giving up your solitary life?" Logan pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. "Hannah, you gave me more than I ever dreamed of having. Before you, I was just surviving, just existing. You taught me how to live again, how to love again. I would give everything I have 1,000 times over for the gift of you and our family." Hannah kissed him, pouring all her love and gratitude into it. "I love you, Logan Mackenzie. Thank you for saving me." "We saved each other," Logan replied, "and I love you too, always and forever." Years passed, and the Mackenzie family continued to grow and thrive. Lucas became a skilled tracker and hunter, taking after his father in his love of the wilderness. Lily was bright and curious, devouring every book in the house and constantly asking questions about everything. They added another son, James, and then another daughter, Rose, until the cabin was bursting with noise and activity and love. Logan built additional rooms as needed, expanding the cabin into a proper homestead. He taught all his children to read and write, to respect nature, and to treat all people with kindness and dignity. And every night, he made sure to tell them the story of how he and their mother met, about the importance of standing up for what is right even when it is hard. Hannah became known throughout the region as a skilled healer, using the knowledge she had gained from books and experience to help neighbors who made the long journey to their remote cabin. She never charged for her services, remembering all too well what it felt like to be desperate and in debt. When Lucas was 15, he asked his father about that day in Los Lunis. "Why did you do it, Pa? You did not know Mama. You could have just walked away." Logan considered the question carefully, wanting to give his son an honest answer. "Because sometimes, son, you see something wrong happening, and you have two choices. You can tell yourself it is not your problem and walk away, or you can step up and do something about it. I looked at your mother that day, and I saw someone who deserved better than what was happening to her. And I knew I could help, so I did. It turned out to be the best decision I ever made." "Because you fell in love," Lucas said. "Because I did the right thing," Logan corrected. "The love was a gift I never expected. But even if your mother and I had not fallen in love, even if she had just taken her freedom and gone somewhere else to build her own life, it still would have been worth it. Because doing the right thing is always worth it," Lucas nodded thoughtfully, absorbing his father's words. Hannah, listening from the doorway, felt tears prick her eyes. She had married a good man, and he was raising good children. What more could she ask for? On their 20th wedding anniversary, Logan surprised Hannah by taking her on a trip, just the two of them. Their children were old enough to manage the homestead for a few days, and Logan wanted to show his wife something special. They rode west into the higher mountains until they reached a meadow Hannah had never seen before. It was absolutely breathtaking, covered in wildflowers and surrounded by snow-capped peaks. A crystal-clear lake reflected the sky like a mirror. "Logan, this is beautiful," Hannah breathed. "I found this place years ago before I met you," Logan said. "I used to come here when I needed to think, to feel close to something bigger than myself. After we married, I never came back because I had everything I needed at home. But I wanted to share it with you now." They spent the day by the lake, talking and laughing and remembering their life together. Logan produced a picnic he had packed, and they ate and drank and watched the clouds drift overhead. "I have been thinking," Logan said as they lay side by side in the grass. "Maybe it is time for me to write our story down, for the children and their children, so they will always know how their family began." Hannah turned to look at him, her heart overflowing with love. "That's a wonderful idea. You should write about how you spent every penny you had on a complete stranger just because it was the right thing to do." "I will write about a woman who refused to let the world break her," Logan said, "about her strength and her courage and her beautiful smile." "My smile," Hannah said softly. "You really did pay everything for nothing but my smile." Logan rolled onto his side, propping himself up on his elbow to look down at her. "And I would do it again in a heartbeat. Your smile, Hannah Mackenzie, was worth every cent and more. But what I got in return, your love, our children, this life we have built that is beyond price." Hannah pulled him down for a kiss, deep and passionate despite their years together. "Take me home, Logan. Home to our children and our cabin and our beautiful life." They rode back the next day, arriving to find the homestead running smoothly under their children's capable management. Lucas had caught a deer, and Lily had prepared a welcome home feast. James and Rose had cleaned the cabin until it sparkled, and they all gathered around the table that night, talking and laughing and sharing stories. Logan looked around at his family, at his wife's radiant face and his children's happy expressions, and felt a peace and contentment that went bone deep. This was what life was supposed to be: connection and love and purpose. As the years continued to pass, Logan and Hannah grew old together gracefully. Their children grew up and started families of their own, though most stayed in the area, unwilling to be far from the mountain home they loved. The cabin expanded further to accommodate visits from grandchildren, and the valley rang with the sound of young voices. Logan's hair turned silver and lines creased his face, but he remained strong and vital well into his 60s. Hannah's auburn hair faded to white, and her hands developed arthritis, but her spirit remained undimmed. They still sat on the porch every evening, holding hands and watching the sunset, still as in love as they had been on their wedding day. One evening, when they were both in their 70s, Hannah turned to Logan with a serious expression. "Do you remember when we first came here, and you said that the first snow felt like a promise?" "I remember," Logan said. "I understand what you meant now. Every day with you has been a promise fulfilled, a promise of love, of home, of belonging. You gave me all of that when you stepped forward in that street so many years ago." Logan brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "And you gave me a reason to live again, instead of just surviving. You gave me joy and purpose and a family I never thought I would have. You gave me everything, Hannah." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and pink. Around them, their valley was alive with the sounds of evening birds settling in for the night, the gentle lowing of cattle, the distant laughter of their grandchildren playing in the yard. "I have been so happy," Hannah said softly, "happier than I ever thought possible. And it all started with your kindness, with your willingness to see me as a person worth saving." "You saved yourself," Logan insisted. "I just held the door open." Hannah shook her head, smiling. "We saved each other, remember? That is what you always say. And it is true." They grew quiet again, and Hannah leaned her head on Logan's broad shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart. This man, who had given everything for nothing but her smile, had ended up with so much more. And so had she. Their children often asked them for advice about love and marriage, and Logan and Hannah always told them the same thing. True love is not about grand gestures or perfect moments. It is about choosing each other every day, about showing up and doing the work and being willing to sacrifice for someone else's well-being. It is about seeing someone as they truly are and loving them anyway, flaws and all. As they entered their 80s, Logan and Hannah slowed down considerably, but they remained sharp and engaged with life. They spent their days reading, tending a smaller version of Hannah's beloved garden, and entertaining the steady stream of children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren who came to visit. Lucas, now a man in his 50s, often brought his own children to visit, and he would tell them the story of how their grandfather had saved their grandmother in the streets of Los Lunis all those years ago. The children would listen with wide eyes, and then they would look at their grandparents with awe and admiration. "Tell us about the smile, Grandpa," the youngest ones would beg. "Tell us about Grandma's smile." And Logan would smile himself, looking over at Hannah with eyes that still held all the love and wonder of that first day. "Your grandmother has the most beautiful smile in the world. It lights up every room she enters and warms every heart that sees it. When I first saw her, she was not smiling because she had been through very hard times. But I knew that if I could just help her, if I could give her a chance at a better life, maybe someday she would smile again. And that hope, that possibility, was worth everything I had." "And did she smile, Grandpa?" the children would ask, even though they already knew the answer. "She did," Logan would say, reaching for Hannah's hand. "She smiled, and she kept smiling, and she filled my life with so much joy that I cannot imagine a single day without her." Hannah would squeeze his hand, her eyes misty with happy tears. "I love thee,